Welcome to Firewall Heatsoul Control. Now, Heatsoul Control is a deck that made many names in the OCG and was overall pretty successful for quite a while. But unfortunately, Heatsoul wasn't printed in TCG for years, and ended up bombing on its introduction and not really having much competitive success at all. However, the upcoming Firewall support that was just revealed in the OCG might be able to help change that, as not only does it make the deck more consistent, it gives it a good bit more power and flexibility. Now, while the Firewall engine may be more potent, say in a Code Talker focused deck, I figured that Heatsoul Control is a pretty good deck to start off with to start exploring the new cards. Now, as for the Firewalls themselves, the main one that was revealed is Firewall Defensor, a level 4 Dark Cyberus with 1200 attack and 1500 defense. And this card's effect is that if it is sent to the graveyard as link material for a Cyberus monster, you can special summon one Firewall monster from your deck except for Defensor. This then locks you into Cyberus monsters for the rest of the turn. Its second effect is that if a Firewall monster you control will be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So not only does this let you fetch Firewalls from the deck, which once you see the later one is pretty good, it does give a layer of protection. The next one is Firewall Phantom, a level 5 Dark Cyberus with 2000 attack and 1300 defense. And this card's effect is that if this card is sent to the graveyard as a link material for a Cyberus monster, you can add one Cynet spell trap from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. Which, if you search something like Cynet Mining, lets you basically get into any Cyberus monster you want, or if you search Cyberus Conflict, get an Omni-Negate that is very powerful. And this is pretty much your main target for Defensor, although, as we'll say about in a minute, there's another good target. This card's second effect is that you can banish this card from your graveyard during the end phase of this turn, shuffle one Cyberus monster from your graveyard into the deck. While this effect is decent-ish, the main thing is it lets you on command banish a Cyberus, which is relevant with another card that was revealed. As for the final Firewall, we have Firewall Guardian, the one that has already existed for quite a long time. Now this card's effect is that if this card is sent to the graveyard as material for the link summon of a Cyberus monster, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So this lets you basically get two bodies for the price of one. It also has the effect where when an attack is declared involving your link monster and an opponent's link monster, you can banish it, negate the attack, and reduce your monster's attack, which is an interesting effect, but unfortunately requires this card to be in the graveyard, which it often won't be. Now, as for the rest of the Cyberus engine, the deck runs the traditional set of Code Talkers and Cyberus cards for Heatsoul, notably Microcoder and Code Generator, both of which can be used as link material for a Code Talker in your hand, and if they're sent from the hand or field to the grave, they can usually either search a card or send one from deck to grave or summon one, and it depends on which Code Talker it is and whether they were on the field or in the hand. And generally you'll be using their in the hand effects, although with these two sometimes you might want to normal summon them if you don't have a Defensor or a Lady Debug. Now Microcoder's effect is that it can search a Cynet spell trap if used from hand, and Code Generator sends a Cyberus with 1200 or less attack from deck to grave if it's used from the hand. And then the main target for this, as we'll speak later, is Dustscaper. The next coder is Rocket Coder, which also got recently released, or revealed in the OCG. And this card is similar, where it can be used as material for a Code Talker in the hand. But it also helps you summon Boral monsters, as if it's used for link summon a Boral, it is treated as a dragon, and if it's on the field and it will be used as link material for a Boral, you can use one Dark monster in your hand for material. Now this card's relevant as it lets you not only easier summon, but also access the negate of Boral and Dragon, which can definitely be made in this deck in later turns and is extremely strong, and a good boost to a deck with a ceiling at the floor. The last of the Code Talkers is Code Exporter, whose effect is that if it's used in the hand, you can target a level 4 lower Cyberus in your grave and add it to your hand, or if this card is on the field, you can special summon it instead. Now this card is good for later turns to recycle Cyberuses, or let you summon, Kill Talker Heatsoul if your hand is especially odd. One of the most powerful cards that's not a Code Talker but is Cyberus is Dustscaper, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card, and if it's banished, you can also do that. But you can only use one effect of it per turn, and once per turn, and you can only use each effect once per duel. The relevant thing about Dotscaper is that it is a very strong discard off of, say, Phantom or Signet Mining, and especially good to be dumped off of a generator to get a free summon. Then the next Cyberse is Backup Secretary, which if you control a Cyberse, you can special summon it from your hand. It's just a solid, very easily searchable extender to do whatever you want with. As for the last Cyberse monster, we have Lady Debug, who searches a level 3 or lower Cyberse from your deck to your hand. And this is mostly good for, say, searching a Backup Secretary, or Code Generator or Microcoder. And it's definitely still strong, but I would say it's not quite as capable of a normal summon as something like Defensor. Now, as for the spell and trap cards, we have Signet Mining, ran at 3. As this card, just discard a card, search a Cyberse. Very strong, and with Phantom, as well as Microcoder, very searchable at pretty much any time. Makes the deck incredibly consistent and lets you have a lot more flexibility in later turns. Then one of the never new cards is Signet Rollback, whose effect is that you can target one of your banished Cyberse monsters and special summon it, which is very good for any of the Firewall cards as they all like to banish themselves a lot, and lets you extend or recover whenever you need to. Its second effect is that during your main phase, if your life points are 2,000 or less, you can banish this card from your grave, then target 2 of your banished Cyberses, add it to your hand. Now this is especially good in a deck like Heatsoul that burns itself constantly in the thousands of life points, and this can let you recycle a ton of monsters, especially if your opponent is banishing yours by their own effects. And as for the trap, Signet Conflict is an Omnigate that also lets you prevent your opponent from activating that card for the whole another turn. And I'm sure you recognize this from all sorts of Cyberse decks, but it's especially good in this one when it's very searchable. Now, I'm also running a setup of 15 hand traps and Call by the Grave. These are here because Heatsoul Control mainly wants to draw a ton of cards, and a good amount of cards on your opponent's turn, so hand traps are especially strong. And Called By is very good for preventing opponent's hand traps from affecting you, or in this format for interrupting the graveyard. Now, as for the extra deck, it is a pretty standard list of Cyberse monsters, mostly to summon Heatsoul or Access Code or Firewall, but there are some notable ones in this deck list. Often, Firewall wasn't ran in Heatsoul before, but the Firewall cards make him a lot more consistent to summon, with a good bit of turn 1 Firewall plus Heatsoul setups, and also Borland Dragon, which with Rocket Coder is a lot better, as this lets you get a negate on your opponent's turn or your turn, as well as reborning a monster from a grave to use as material. It also is very hard to get rid of and can attack many times. It's an incredibly strong boss monster and is not the most hard card to summon in this deck, but summoning at turn 1 is almost never going to happen. And as for the side deck, well, this is just a basic example side deck. It's definitely not perfect, but it's there. Now as for just a random test hand, this is a test hand considering of Code Generator, Backup Secretary, Effect Veiler, Firewall Defensor, and another Veiler. To start off with, I will normal summon Defensor, and then link into a Cold Talker Inverted. Then I will trigger both of these two's effects, trigger Defensor, as well as Code Generator. Using Code Generator, I will dump Dotscaper, and using Defensor, I will summon Phantom. I'll then use Dotscaper's effect to summon itself. I can then go ahead and make a Transcode Talker, summon these two, and triggering Firewall Phantom to search a Signet Conflict, in this case discarding an Effect Veiler. Then I can use Transcode Talker to bring back Inverted, and link these two off into Heatsoul. Using Heatsoul, I will draw one card, in this case a Defensor, then I can special summon Backup Secretary to make a Firewall Dragon. Here, and then on the opponent's turn, I can draw a card in their draw or standby phase, in case of DD Crow. Now, this board is pretty potent, as not only do I have a Signet Conflict Omnigate, I have a Firewall Dragon Bounce, a Veiler, and a DD Crow. which is definitely pretty competent. And with Firewall Defensor, I have plenty of follow-up play on the following turn, even if my whole board gets wiped. Now, here's to show you what you can accomplish with just one Defensor and a discard, leading you to Heatsoul, Conflict, a draw on your turn, and a draw on the opponent's turn. And here's what happens when you have Defensor and Code Generator. This leads you to a Transcode Talker, Heatsoul, Conflict, and a draw on your turn and the opponent's turn. The same can be accomplished with Firewall Defensor and Microcoder. Now this is just an example duel to show how the deck plays out.